Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto was assigned to Asuma and Team 10. Mizuki never got to shoot his mouth off at Naruto the night he took the Scroll of Seals. Other than skipping a half-manic monologue from him, what exactly did this change for everyone's favorite blonde ninja? Who knows? Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 36, That Old Glass Ceiling. With Sasuke, Ta-no-Kuni/Hi-no-Kuni border area, nighttime. Sasuke shook the cobwebs off after getting hit in the face harder than he had ever cared to get hit in his ninja career. Even Chuji never hit him that hard because they pulled punches more often than not when they sparred. He got back up to his feet with a kunai in hand from his supply pouch as he bled from his lip and his Sharingan eyes scanned the whole immediate vicinity of the forest. I can't believe I actually hit you with that punch. I figured that you Uchiha clan members had more of a kick to you than that. With that, the young man that had hit Sasuke, the one with the gray hair, pale skin, and turquoise lipstick, came towards him into clear and plain view. Hearing the confident voice of the teen slightly older than Sasuke that came walking calmly from the trees to face off with him, the newly minted Konoha-chunin narrowed his eyes and wiped the blood from his mouth. Get over here and I'll show you just how much kick I have once I kick your ass. You Konoha trash are so weak. Let's find out if that's true or not. Sasuke rushed forward to attack his opponent, wondering where the rest of his team happened to be for a split second before he launched his kunai at the enemy. With a grin that could be easily seen by Sasuke's sharp eyes even in the nighttime shadows of the forest, the strange young man dodged the blade before eating a kick right in his stomach from Sasuke that sucked the air and spittle right out of him. He's fast. He reacted and tried to deliver a punch to Sasuke but missed and watched as Sasuke backhand sprang out of his physical attack range, smirking at him after landing a blow without retaliation. Great reflexes. Sasuke quipped sarcastically, I'm going to run circles around you all night if that's what you've got. And you say that we're weak. A glare came Sasuke's way before the Oto Shinobi laughed, placing his hand over his right eye, covering it as he pushed his bang up. I like that. Your trash talk needs work, but that wit of yours is almost as quick as you are. My name is Seikon. I don't give a damn. Sasuke replied, his smirk dropping and being replaced with his usual cold, stoic demeanor. What the hell are you doing here? Seikon clicked his tongue in a chiding fashion and wagged a finger at Sasuke, setting the boy off again. What am I doing here? You are trespassing on the border of a sovereign country. Just because Konoha apparently rules the roost in this region doesn't mean you can just do as you like. Your little village isn't as strong as they like to make you think they are, and neither are you. That was all Sasuke needed to hear from some guy that had randomly jumped him and his team and had separated him from them. He needed to defeat this guy and get past to reach them and find out what had happened to them. If he didn't already have enough motivation, now he was pissed off at this random person declaring him as weak without even fighting him first. Well, he was going to change that tune to the beat of Sasuke dancing on his head in a few moments. Sasuke rushed back in to attack him with his taijutsu, trading punches and kicks with nothing that had any substance landing for either ninja. Sasuke wound up being knocked back a few steps with a hard double palm thrust to the chest that knocked him back first into a tree, with Seikon following up, attempting a hard haymaker of a punch, Tarinkan, multiple connecting fists. From Seikon's punching arm at the elbow, two other arms seemed to suddenly appear to hit Sasuke along with the original fist coming at him from the middle of the three. There was no way he was going to stick around in front of that to be hit with three punches all at the same time again, not after taking it the first time. Sasuke ducked out of the way of the punches and watched the hit crack the wood of the tree upon contact. What a powerful punch. But instead of marveling at Seikon's strength to deal such damage to a sturdy tree with one attack, Sasuke chose to launch a counter-attack of his own, drawing a kunai from the pouch on his thigh and bringing it around in a stabbing motion meant to drive into Seikon's neck to end the fight. Until an arm reached out from the back of Seikon's shoulder and stopped Sasuke's stab by grabbing his wrist. Good try. Seikon said with a smirk, his back still turned to Sasuke as the wrongly placed arm that had suddenly sprouted continued to hold onto him. For such a nice effort, I think I'll give you a hand. A second arm sprouted from the back of Seikon's other shoulder and nailed Sasuke with a punch to the face that knocked him back. Seikon whirled around and then threw a kick, Terenkyaku, multiple connected feet. From Seikon's hip joint, 2 more legs seemed to momentarily sprout and deliver simultaneous kicks to Sasuke's body. A dark grin came over his face at the feeling of Sasuke's abdominal muscles giving way as he bashed his ribs with the attack. With Sasuke's defenses down due to the successful kick, Seikon began gleefully pummeling Sasuke with his bare hands, not letting up and giving Sasuke the needed second to analyze his move and counter with his incomplete Sharingan. Like I said, you're weak. You might be able to slap around wimpy thugs and bandits, and you might be able to beat any other insect your age, but compared to a real true elite of Otogaku, you're a lightweight. I'm one of Orochimaru-sama's elites. The very best. Sasuke was knocked to the ground, his vision swimming from the repeated punches he had been taking to the face and head, but his mind still working even as he was hoisted off of the ground by the collar of his vest. Orochimaru. He was a Konoha ninja, wasn't he? One of Hokage-sama's students, just like the Tsunade woman that healed me after the exams. But he left after committing a bunch of crimes. Stay with me now. Seikon ordered, socking Sasuke in the belly one good time before tossing him out of his flak jacket to the ground and holding it up. They'll give these to anyone in your village, won't they? Now I'm not saying that you're not good because you are, but from the stories I've heard, you're no Itachi. He then felt Sasuke's fist buried firmly in his stomach, doubling him over in agony. Don't you ever mention that man's name in front of me. Sasuke said lowly in a dangerous tone of voice, you don't know the first thing about anything, so don't compare us, or use his name like you're familiar. Even with Sasuke's punch sucking the wind out of his lungs, Seikon smirked and wheezed out a response, hit a nerve did I? You're run-of-the-mill compared to Itachi. Or are you a secret Umbu captain and no one knew about it? He lifted his hands in a double sledgehammer blow but was cut off by a rising kick that sent Seikon into the air. Even though an extra pair of arms came from his body to block the kick, Sasuke's foot went right through his attempted defense, the Sharingan. It lets him adjust in a split second. That's absurd. Rank doesn't mean anything to me. Sasuke said as he flew through the air, matching Seikon's trajectory right beneath him as if he were his shadow, Kagebayu, shadow of the dancing leaf. Something he had managed to glean and copy from Rock Lee during the exams and the Team Guy/Team Asuma matchup. How did he get there without me even noticing? Seikon thought, gritting his teeth angrily. The only reason I care about being a Chunin so that I can keep on getting stronger and testing myself so that I'll know when I'm ready for him. The alarmed Seikon tried to turn in the air and punch Sasuke, but the moment he made even the slightest move, Sasuke shifted to the opposite side that he was turning towards and delivered a hard kick that pushed him above Seikon and began sending him down to the ground. He then quickly smashed him with a backhand and then spun through with a hard front punch as the ground got closer faster and faster. Sasuke then finished the combination in time with Seikon hitting the ground, delivering a smashing axe kick to his sternum, Shishirenden, lion combo. After delivering the final blow that smashed Seikon into the forest floor, Sasuke rolled back away from him and got his distance, turning his eyes towards where Seikon dropped his flak jacket. Sneering one last time at someone that had disrespected something that Sasuke had broken his body to obtain, he walked over and picked up the padded article of clothing before putting it back on and zipping it up. And this is what toying with your enemy gets you in the end, Seikon. Shut up, Yukon, all you do is sleep, so I wouldn't expect you to get the concept of trying to have fun. And look at what your fun has gotten you, all beaten up by our person of interest. I said shut up. I can still fight. Sasuke turned around to believe that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Instead of just Seikon, he saw a mirror image of Seikon standing there over the bruised and beaten one, taking a knee that Sasuke had sworn he had just finished putting down hard. No way. You should be out cold after that. And he would have been. The second identical Oto ninja, Yukon said, gesturing his head down to his apparent brother. Luckily I'm such a caring brother and I broke his fall to keep you from breaking his back and sternum. So that's where the extra limbs came from. Sasuke mentally deduced, setting himself in a fighting stance to prepare for more fighting. Somehow this guy was inside of the other one. How freaky. Seikon stood back up, glaring angrily at Sasuke, but before he could walk over to continue fighting him, Yukon put a hand on his shoulder to hold him back and spoke up. No, we've had enough of you trying to do that. Do you know how much time you've wasted? From now on we handle this my way. As he said that, black markings spread from his forehead around his entire body, and my way is quicker. Tisk. Seikon sounded quite displeased at his fight being hijacked by his twin brother, but listened anyway and activated his own seal that formed his own black markings all over his body. This is not good. Sasuke said as his eyes could see the foul chakra radiating off of their bodies. They both seem at least twice as strong now. Kakashi vs. Jirobo. You're very strong, but you're very slow. Kakashi commented as he dodged a tree being picked up and thrown at him by jumping over it while it slid through and tore up the ground. Are you sure you were the proper member of your team to come and fight me? Instead of before when Jirobo simply had the black markings on his skin, he was now red-skinned with tough-looking bumps on his shoulders and forehead, with his orange mohawk turning into a mane going down his back, and with black eyes with yellow irises. I'm all that's needed. With this power that Orochimaru has gifted me with, I can even overcome the likes of you Hatake. He then smashed the ground with his palm, kicking up a lot of rocks and chunks of earth as well as causing a mini tremor to rattle the woods. Kakashi's footing was momentarily compromised and Jirobo took full advantage of that when he seemed to reach down onto the ground and rip up a massive lump of the ground over his head as if it were nothing. What kind of strength does this seal on the boy give the user? Kakashi wondered in shock as the fear creeping into his heart at the fates of his students began to set it. He said that everyone on his team had a similar ability. Doton, Doryu Earth Release, Earth Mausoleum Dumpling. Jirobo chucked the large mass of earth at Kakashi and smirked when he heard the attack hit the ground with a booming crash as it slid across the ground, eventually crashing into a row of trees as it came to a stop, leaving a massive drag mark along the ground where it had been sliding. From behind Jirobo, Kakashi's arms popped up out of the ground and grabbed a hold of the Oto ninja's ankles. Doton, Shinjuyu Zanshu no dash. No you don't. The powerful young man immediately reached down and grabbed Kakashi's arms, pulling him out of the ground by them before viciously slamming him into the ground. Just die already you trash. Once he crushed Kakashi's body between his and the ground with the slam, the body of the Sharingan-wielding shinobi disappeared in a puff of smoke. Jirobo got up off of the ground and turned around once he heard the sound of electricity crackling. With a gasp he saw Kakashi's hand building up lightning chakra and struck the ground with his hands once Kakashi began rushing forward at him. Doton, Darokuga Ishi, Earth Release, Earth Shore Return. A wall rose up from the ground in front of Jirobo, blocking Kakashi from coming right at him with the dangerous ninjutsu in his right hand, but before Jirobo could spring back and move away from the wall since he figured Kakashi would punch through it, he turned his head to the side to see Kakashi there, having not moved to destroy the wall at all, only choosing to go around it. Raikiri, Lightning Cutter. Jirobo immediately began choking on his own blood when he found Kakashi's right hand shoved right into his left side, forearm deep, as the only thing keeping him alive happened to be the electricity coursing through his body. His strange transformation began to recede and return him to his normal appearance as he tried in vain to clutch at Kakashi's arm with any kind of strength as he sank to his knees on the ground. The eye lets me adjust to sudden changes in the environment of the battlefield, even things as quick as your defensive wall coming up from the ground. It wasn't that wide, so I just went around it. Kakashi saw Jirobo's eyes with panic and desperation in them as he gave the boy the last words he'd hear, sorry. I saw that opening that just screamed attack, so I did. He then pulled his arm out of Jirobo's chest and let him sink backwards on his knees dead. Kakashi at least spared a second from that point afterward to make sure Jirobo was laying down in a more dignified position and his eyes were closed. He shook his head at the sight, way too young for this. He then thought about his comment and shook his head, no he wasn't. And neither are my kids. He said to himself before looking at Jirobo's blood on his hand and making a set of hand seals, Kuchi Yasei no Jutsu, Summoning Jutsu. Slamming the bloody hand onto the ground in a puff of smoke, a pack of dogs varying in size and breed appeared in front of him. You know what Sakura, Sasuke, and Chuji smell like. I want you to split up and locate them. Now. With affirming barks, the ninja hounds set out to do just that, with Kakashi making a corresponding Kage Bunshin for each half of the pack of dogs as they split up into two groups and took off in separate directions. Naruto, Shikamaru, Ino, and Idate vs. Guren, Chano Kuni, Northern Docks of Degarashi Port, Nightfall. Guren stood on the railing of the ship she had revealed herself to Team 10 from and smirked down at them as they and Idate all looked ready to anticipate an attack from her. If I attacked all of you there wouldn't be a second one, so why don't you all Jews go ahead and give me your best shot? Maybe one of you will get lucky and you can take the fact that you got a hit on me to the grave. It's 4-on-1 here, lady. Naruto shouted up at her challengingly, you can't beat us by yourself, so just leave town already, and tell Gato or whoever you're working for that he's not welcome here. I'm only working for that worm Gato because he's got a deal going with my actual master. And it wouldn't matter if it was 50 of you against one of me. You still wouldn't have a prayer of winning against here. Guren said confidently, not even looking down at the kids before her as a threat, especially the boisterous blonde kid with the orange clothes and the goggles on his head. Naruto growled at Guren and made the cross seal with his index and middle fingers, Tajuyo Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. In a puff of smoke, dozens of Naruto clones lined the dock by the ship, all glaring up at Guren. Let's find out for sure. All of the clones barked in unison before springing into action against Guren at once. Naruto, wait. Shikamaru yelled as he watched every copy of his fellow rookie Chunin launch an attack right at Guren. We don't know what she can do. You should listen to your friend, sweetie. Guren said as she jumped off of her place on the ship over the top of all of Naruto's clones and the rest of the young ninja below her while making a decent amount of hand seals, Keshu, Rakeku Shuriken, Ranbyu, Crystal, Hexagonal Shuriken, Wild Dance. From thin air she created and began to bombard them with a massive amount of shuriken, spinning rapidly like razor blades as they began picking Naruto's clones apart and forcing the others to dodge or be hit. They retreated off of the dock back towards the warehouses amid the sounds of the shuriken thudding into the dock and the poof noises of Naruto's clones being dispelled. As they ran, Ino took a look at one of the weapons that had stabbed into the ground. These look just like the snowflake-looking thing that Naruto showed us at the stand. So this woman attacked Boss Jirobo. Idate said angrily, glaring back at Guren as he wished he was strong enough to make her pay right then. The remaining 20 clones of Naruto had warily drawn their machetes as they walked slowly towards Guren, who had landed on the dock, still smirking at Naruto and his doppelgangers as they continued to advance her way. Okay, that was really impressive. Naruto thought to himself as he walked forward carefully with his clones. This lady moves fast and all of those shuriken came from nowhere. I've got to slow her down. With that thought, Naruto planned to use his clones to try and box her and to overwhelm her. Guren had other plans, however. She made 4 more hand seals, getting Naruto's clones to tense in preparation until she chuckled, "You want to play taijutsu with me? That's just fine. Shouten, Suishao Dio, Crystal Release, Jade Crystal Blade." A long arm blade formed from the back of her forearm to extend over her fist before she ran headlong into Naruto's clones. Without fanfare she began hacking and slashing her way through the crowd indiscriminately. Her movements were so fast, Naruto's mental feedback from the demise of his clones happened to be the only thing that protected the original, as he was able to track Guren's trail of destruction before she gave him a new breathing hole in his throat as he blocked her with his machete, letting out a panicked breath as he realized just how close he came to not even seeing the attack coming. Guren shoved Naruto back and prepared to strike at him again before she saw a flash of purple and dove away from Naruto as a trio of senbon whizzed past her body. Her attention momentarily diverted by Ino, Guren barely redirected her attention back to Naruto in time to lean back out of the way of a horizontal swipe of his machete. Guren kicked Naruto in the side of the head when leaning back, knocking him away from her. Dakasei Tanki Shat, Toxic Spitfire. Ino spat several purple poisonous globs at Guren, forcing her to jump away from them, but as she watched her own trajectory she saw an unnaturally long shadow along the ground rushing to where she was about to make a landing. The moment her feet made contact with the ground she jumped away from the shadow, tracing it with her eyes back to Shikamaru, who was intently focusing on pursuing her with the jutsu. In a method of evasion, Guren jumped from the dock onto the side of the ship, watching as Shikamaru's shadow couldn't bridge the divide from the dock to the ship across the water. A kunai sank itself into the side of the ship where she was standing that she evaded by moving up and landing on the deck. Is that the best you've got, kids? Run on back to your parents before I really hurt you. And apparently they took her advice, because before she had even started talking, Naruto and Ino had been hauling ass away from the scene. What she didn't see was what had been attached to the kunai that had stuck into the ship. Hanging from the ring of the kunai on a strand of ninja wire was a rather large ball of explosive tags, at least 15 wrapped together with one on the surface burning down. Boom. A massive explosion rocked the entire side of the ship, sending debris, wood, supplies, and even the deck that Team 10 had been standing on flying in a fiery blast that was impressive even by Naruto's slightly pyromaniacal standards. Yeah. Naruto, goggles over his eyes so that he could look at the blast safely, cheered exuberantly with his hands in the air victoriously. If an explosion doesn't solve your problems, then you're just not using enough explosives, Dateba yo. How do you like us now, Crystal Lady? Ino sighed as she looked into her supply pouch. You couldn't just use all of your own tags for that? You had to waste all of mine too, Goldie-kun. Idate, who had been hanging back with Shikamaru as he lacked any weapons or ninjutsu to fight Guren with, grabbed his head in something of a panic. You can't just blow up ships and docks like that. Who's the hell's going to pay for all of this? Idate pointed at the destroyed dock with wooden remnants in flames and the sinking ship with smoke and fire billowing up into the sky from it. It's Gato's. Shikamaru commented in a rather uncaring manner. Who cares? We just took out your boss's assassin. I think he'd rather pay the damages for the docks than be dead. He then saw that Idate hadn't lowered his hand from pointing, nor had he taken his eyes away from the flaming ship. What's the matter? He looked over at the ship again and widened his eyes. Troublesome. Sticking out of the water behind the flaming ship and looking like an iceberg was a massive gathering of crystal with Guren standing at the top of it as it floated. Yeah. Guren said in a completely unamused tone at almost getting blown up in what she saw as a fluke. You've all got to die. She still doesn't have a scratch on her. Shikamaru thought to himself before shaking Idate's shoulder. I want you to run and find Asuma-sensei, fast. Tell him we're fighting someone strong and to get over here. The further this stays away from the Wasabi or Wagarashi houses or the town in general, the better things are. Idate nodded, and immediately from beneath his leg warmers he dropped a pair of weights that hit the ground with a crash and took off running at an absurd speed to leave the port area and head back into town. Guren watched him leave with a scoff and turned her attention back to the trio of young Konoha genin. And you're sending for help to boot. It's too bad that by the time he finds who he's looking for, your blood will be cold on the ground. Naruto's slack-jawed expression at seeing Guren unharmed from the sheer amount of explosive tags that he had used to make sure he took her out gave way to a look of determination. Come and try it then. I'll send whatever you throw at me right back at you 20-fold. Guren jumped off of her floating crystal onto the concrete that ran alongside the length ocean for most of the docks, still looking very grave and ill-tempered. No smirk, no snide comments. With a motion of her hands she began running forward as a disc-shaped wheel of crystal formed around her that tore through the ground as she ran directly at Team 10 with a dangerous speed. Knowing that if it could tear up the ground it would slice them into ribbons, all three of them dove out of her way. But when she passed them she abandoned the wheel and hurriedly assaulted all three, leveling Ino with a nasty punch to the face and a kick that knocked her away onto her back before dodging a retaliation machete swing from Naruto and nailing him with one of her own. Shikamaru saw that in the moonlight and in the light from the nearby fire he could identify a sheen on her skin underneath her clothing that was a translucent layer of crystal she formed like some kind of armor. Who is this woman? Shikamaru thought to himself as she turned her attention towards him and dove out of the way of a kick that was aimed at him before he tossed a few shuriken at her. She can deal with all three of us. We haven't come close to hitting her yet. Guren began steadily focusing her attack on Shikamaru as she was not going to risk being caught by his shadow and immobilized. He was never one for taijutsu, but he was being forced into a hand-to-hand battle, and as Shikamaru tried to defend himself against Guren's swift and accurate crystal-lined punches that steadily began to quickly bruise and cut his face, he wondered just what kind of skill other Otogaku or shinobi had. Ino had by then gotten up and had drawn a kunai to help Shikamaru fight in close with, but as she attacked Guren from behind she ate a malicious back kick to her face that knocked her away. Naruto jumped back into the fray with his clones and his machete, but Guren grabbed Shikamaru by the collar of his flak vest and threw him at the copies of Naruto to get rid of most of them and to get them to lower their weapons so they didn't hurt Shikamaru by accident. After beating the rest of Naruto's clones into smoke, Guren began quickly looking around for the real Naruto and saw him swinging his machete by his chain with one hand while making a one-handed ram seal, Suishinki Harat Subunkatsu Sen, propeller burst splitter. He yelled before blowing wind chakra into the spinning machete blade. The cylindrical blast of blade wind coming her way had Guren blocking with her arms in front of her face, but Naruto's attack only blew her backwards until she ground her feet in tightly and left nicks and gashes at best in her crystal armor. She rushed directly at Naruto through the force of his wind until she could break out of the affected area of the jutsu. From there she rushed at him and held one hand out that got within inches of him, just short of actually touching him. Naruto thought he had dodged her and was preparing to see if her crystal armor could take a slash from a wind-coated chakra blade, but her next words stopped that course of action short. Shouten, Kesu Gokakura, Crystal Release, Crystal Pentagonal Prison. It was almost surreal to watch as Naruto was entirely encased in crystal that emerged from the ground and ripped through the concrete, freezing him in time with a bewildered look on his face while mid-swing with his machete as if he could feel an irregularity prior to being trapped. Guren looked at her own work of art, with Naruto fossilized inside of the crystal by way of her jutsu. That's much better. Now I won't have that brat's grating voice murdering my ears. You're much more bearable stuck in a crystal, she said, patting the structure that held Naruto frozen and unresponsive. Naruto? Shikamaru couldn't believe what she had just seen. She didn't even touch him. He dodged her and she still got him with whatever she did. Guren didn't have to touch anything to encase it in crystal as long as it was merely in the near vicinity. But it was different when it was just thin air. She had just encased their friend in the middle of a crystal. He turned towards Ino and saw her hands covering her open mouth in horror as she stared at Naruto. Ino, come on, you've got to snap out of it. Ino wanted to walk towards him, to touch him to see if it was actually real. He wasn't moving a muscle. He wasn't even blinking. Goldie-kun, he's alright isn't he? She asked Shikamaru, desperately wanting to hear a yes. Shika, he's going to be alright once we get him out of there, right? We can chisel him out somehow, can't we? I wouldn't do that. Guren said matter-of-factly, rapping a knuckle on the crystal that encased Naruto. If you break the crystal you'll break him too. He'll flitter through the air just like particles of the prison. But hey, at least he'll make a good decoration for someone's living room. And you're all next. Shikamaru placed a hand on Ino's shaking shoulder. We can get him out of there after we find some way out of this. We can't do anything to help him if we're dead, okay? Ino nodded reluctantly, wiping gathering tears out of her eyes as she glared murderously at Guren. That was pretty much all Ino needed to hear, as if she needed another reason to want to finish off Guren. Dakujiri, poison mist. Ino exhaled a purple cloud of gas from her mouth that forced Guren to dodge, and as she did, Shikamaru's shadow appeared from the cloud that had been obscuring her vision to try and make contact with her. Damn it! Shikamaru grit his teeth as his shadow continued to give chase, pushing Guren further away from Naruto's crystal-encased body. I can't even start to use my new jutsu until I catch her with the Kagemon no jutsu. Was he going to have to get inventive to try and trap her somehow? I really don't want to use the other jutsu I learned, but I can't be picky at a time like this. Shikamaru, watch my body. Ino said, not leaving any room for argument as she made a special hand seal that joined the index, pinky, and thumb fingers of both hands to take aim at Guren. Shikamaru heard that and was about to stop her from trying to hit such a fast-moving target with her clan jutsu, but he noticed that Ino's hands were in a different seal than it would have been for the Shintenshin no jutsu. That's not how she fires her consciousness for Shintenshin. Is this her new jutsu? Shinjoishin no jutsu, mind-body projection jutsu. Ino shouted before her body fell limp, and from the lifeless body rose a spectral avatar of the blonde girl with a ghost-like lower half. Ghost Ino looked over at Shikamaru's curious expression and grinned. Yep, it's exactly what it looks like. I am a motherfucking ghost. She then turned towards Guren with a dark look on her face. Oh, I can't wait to possess you and do all kinds of messed up stuff to your body. Ghost Ino flew at Guren swiftly, with Guren creating a few crystal shuriken to throw at Ino. To her misfortune, however, they just passed right through her and she was forced to dodge, not particularly knowing why Ino wanted to make contact with her, but also not willing to let something she just saw phase weaponry through her body get close. Once Ino missed her kamikaze-like rush, Guren's attention turned back towards Shikamaru, who was again attacking with his shadow. Don't you get the point yet, kid? Your shadow's too slow to get me as long as I'm paying attention to you. And there's no way I'm letting a Nara, even a brat like you, get a chance to connive behind my back. She then saw Ino's prone body nearby Shikamaru's and smirked again, a course of action set for her to take. Before she could though, she had to move out of the way of another attack from Ino. This time from the air, as after the spectral dive bomb missed, Ino's avatar passed through the ground. Guren jumped backwards hard to avoid Ino's next move to attack her blind spot from underneath and kicked a crate in the direction of Shikamaru's advancing shadow in order to give herself an extra second to put some more space between it and her. When she did that though, she found herself looking back up in the direction of Ino's spiritual figure, diving towards her again with intent to make contact. However, Ino abruptly stopped short, no longer able to move any further forward. Ino let out a gasp and tried to float further, but she was unable to do so despite every effort to reach ahead. No, that can't be the limit. That's 150 feet. She asked to no one in particular incredulously before turning back to Shikamaru. She's out of my range. She shouted in warning before a gigantic snowflake-looking crystal passed through her towards both Shikamaru and her body. No. Guess who? Kyode Rakeku Shuriken, crystal, giant hexagonal shuriken. Shikamaru. Ino shouted, trying to get him to move. It was her own fault that her pursuit of Guren failed. If her body was to pay the price for not keeping track of her jutsu's own limit, then that was her own problem and fault, which was why she was poised to let out a blood-curdling scream when she saw Shikamaru dive at her body and shove it out of the way of Guren's attack, letting the crystal blade rip into his own instead. She was about to scream until she saw Shikamaru's body disappear in a puff of smoke. Ino, get back into your body now. Without even turning to see where Shikamaru's voice was coming from due to the all-out authority he shouted at her with, Ino did just that, getting back into her body and sitting up with haste. There was no blood from Shikamaru, nothing he used to substitute himself with, nothing. How'd he get out of that? I take back what I used to think about how learning Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu, would be cool. Shikamaru said, panting heavily from his place by the corner of a nearby warehouse as a shadow from him continued to chase Guren around. It's exhausting, for just one clone. I was told I had the reserves for it, but I figured that meant I'd be able to do it and have enough chakra to fight almost at full capacity myself. Ino saw this and stood back up on her feet. You jerk. Are you telling me Goldie-kun taught you that jutsu and he didn't teach me even when I asked him to? Dad taught me that. Shikamaru clarified, as he had never even asked Naruto to do so, knowing that Naruto was forbidden from doing so. I thought your ghost would keep Guren off guard long enough for me to get into position to capture her, but you can't go that far from your body and she attacked. I had to make my move to keep her from trying another one while you were getting back. The sweat pouring down his face from exertion due to attempting to catch Guren with his shadow for so long was evident of his growing exhaustion. He had split his chakra in half and used it to form a clone that had been throwing Guren off to make her believe it was still the original Shikamaru with its own shadow attack. This was after already extensively using his jutsu to direct her into attacks from both Ino and Naruto combined. Ino had never seen Shikamaru use his shadow so much before. By this point in a battle he had usually either captured their enemy, or had directed them into a finishing blow from her or Naruto. We can't get her, Ino said with some desperation, even with the new stuff we learned. Just who is this person? She then saw Shikamaru's shadow retract back to himself as he fell to his knees, trying to use the wall of the warehouse he was by to stand back up. Come on Shika, please don't stay down. You have to get back dash. A sharp pain in her side later and Ino felt too much shock to continue speaking as she fell to the ground. Her clothes and her body felt wet but she didn't have the energy to lift her head and body to check how badly she was bleeding though. Guren stood over Ino with blood dripping from her crystal arm blade reformed and prepared to finish her off and move on to the last Konoha ninja that stood before her when a kunai flew past her from behind, aimed badly. She turned and saw Shikamaru standing back up, leaning against the wall of the warehouse with his entire body beaten, bruised, bleeding from his nose and mouth, but still standing to face her. You've got to have some kind of death wish, kid. If you tried to run you might have had a chance at getting a good distance away while I finished your friend. Sorry. Shikamaru said, drawing another kunai to defend himself with. I'm just not the kind of guy that would leave his friends behind. No matter how dumb that makes me seem. Guren just stared at him wondering why even the kids from that village seemed to act this way. Will of fire? Yeah, whatever, you know, you look tired. I am tired. Then let me help you go to sleep. Another large snowflake-looking crystal shuriken flew at Shikamaru and despite him pushing himself off of the wall it still cut deeply into him, making blood fly as he fell to the ground with a thud. With a satisfied-sounding sigh at her handiwork, Guren looked around the dock area at the fallen and motionless Shikamaru and Ino. She spared them one last glance before walking over to the crystallized Naruto, observing him one last time before drawing her arm blade back to smash him into shards. Before she let fly with the punch though, she noticed something. Hey, didn't this brat have blue eyes before? And she then had to cover her eyes once the crystal that used to imprison Naruto exploded and sent shards everywhere. While her eyes were closed, a fist hit her right in the face and sent her bouncing along the ground like a ragdoll until she finally got back up. The thin layer of crystal that had been covering her skin cracked and fell off, revealing her actual skin on her face as she looked at Naruto. Well, would you look at that? Orange chakra was blazing around Naruto's body like fire, and he had dropped his machete to the ground with a metal clang. His eyes indeed weren't blue any longer, they were red with vertical slits in them. His whisker marks were darker and deeper in his cheeks than before, and he was staring at Guren hatefully. I saw everything. You should have been dead. Guren remarked matter-of-factly, and now you're not. That's the chakra from the Kyuubi no Yoko, isn't it? She asked curiously, not even registering or caring that Naruto was angry. You're more interesting than I thought. Your chakra must be pretty strong to survive being stuck in there for as long as you did. The Kyuubi made him watch. When he was first trapped, he immediately tried to tap into the Kyuubi's chakra to try and break free, but it laughingly denied him, even when he said that Guren would kill him and by proxy it if it didn't. Still, the Kyuubi assured him that he would survive for long enough to get its point across. And he watched Shikamaru do their best and still fail. This was where the point was made right before the Kyuubi finally gave him the chakra he needed to break free and escape. It was the same point that the creature had been trying to make since the end of the Chunin exams in his fight with Gaara. You're weak, and without me you're nothing. The nonchalant look on Guren's face as she observed him, not particularly caring that she had stricken down his friends, only added to his rage, and if it was the last thing he did, he was going to vent some of that aggression on her. Asuma vs. Fuma clan. It was like some kind of cheesy ghost town showdown scene. Asuma had sent the Wagarashi family representatives away for their own safety, and because they would only get in his way, while he faced off with their 3 assassins in the middle of the deserted nighttime street. Representatives from Otagaku were to boot. Okay, that fight was doable for him. He was Sarutobi Asuma after all, and in his mind at least that meant something. To begin, Asuma simply blitzed ahead, self-assured of his own taijutsu skills to handle 3 combatants at once with his trench knives and the chakra blades. Apparently they thought the same of his skills, since they leapt away from him, not looking forward to getting into a fist fight with him. Not to be deterred, Asuma merely used this as a way to pinpoint which of them was the slowest. His target for the moment identified as the easiest prey, Asuma diverted his direction to go after the bald man Jirobo. In one motion, Asuma cut right through the man with his chakra extensions from his trench knives, cleaving him in 2. But once he did so, Jirobo's body turned into a mass of small spiders that began to try and spin webs around Asuma. Asuma cut his way through the webbing but wound up getting his arms up to block a kunai attack from the dark-haired Kamikiri. He struggled against the man for a moment before kicking him away roughly. Kazigamo no Jutsu, Wind Spider's Jutsu. Thick webs from the same spiders from before began to descend around Asuma as Kamikiri's boy rolled away on the ground from his kick. In response, Asuma began cutting through the webs to keep them from landing on him and tying him down. A kunai flew at Asuma and a tilt of the man's head saw it whiz past him, but as he continued to cut through threads at a swift rate, he felt something wrap around the back of his neck and saw the kunai swing around like it was attached to a rope. He saw a blue thread of chakra connecting it and went wide-eyed as he felt the chakra string wrap around his throat, barely able to get one hand with a few fingers in between to keep it from flat-out strangling him on the spot. This wound up with Kamikiri yanking him forward with the chakra thread and dragging him down onto the dusty street. An angry Asuma cut himself free with his wind chakra-coated trench knife and got back up to his feet, only for Jirobo and Kajiro's hunchbacked form to slam into him and smash him through a wall. Kamikiri rushed towards the hole in the building to assist his teammates in possibly finishing off the Konohajonin, only for both of them to be hurled out of the wall through newly made holes, stopping him from going inside. He huddled over his teammates and helped them back to their feet as they then saw a small spark of fire coming from inside one of the holes in the wall they had just punched through. Kajiro, get him now! Kamikiri yelled, seeing an opening for them to take advantage of. Katon, Kazumi Enbu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Mist Blaze Dance Jutsu. Kajiro's mouth opened and blew out a gas that sprayed into the building, and when it came into contact with the small wisp of flame that they had seen inside, it blew up in a fiery explosion. All three Otagaku or Fuma clan shinobi looked at the damage they had just wrought with a double sense of accomplishment. Not only was this adding on to the execution of their mission, they had just blown up Sarutobi Asuma, a rather famous Konohagaku or shinobi. Until they heard a content-sounding inhale and exhale come from down the street, only to see Asuma standing there unscathed, with a lit cigarette in his hand. Oh, that's so much better. It's been 3 days since the last one I've had. Jirobo started to growl angrily at Asuma, still smarting from being unceremoniously hurled out of a building with one arm along with his partner Kajiro just moments prior. You're mocking us, aren't you? Asuma's only response was blowing rain clouds with his cigarette. Otokage-sama is helping us bring our clan back to prominence, and in return we're one of Otagaku's more prominent clans. Finally, the Fuma clan is once more getting the respect we've earned all those years ago. Fuma clan. Asuma said to himself as if that name had sparked a thought. Wait, you're the clan that popularized the Fuma shuriken? How the hell did you fall from prominence? That thing was awesome. One of the baddest ass weapons that ever existed for widespread use. The three looked at each other before Kajiro spoke. Different clan. Oh. Asuma said in understanding as he took another drag from his cigarette. Well, wait, Otokage? Who the hell made your leader a Kage? Nobody else recognizes that crap as legit. We don't need to hear anything else from you. Jirobo said, just die already. Asuma shrugged his shoulders and tapped the ashes off of the end of his cigarette before just letting it sit in his mouth. Wait until I finish my cigarette. All three Fuma clan members bristled at what they perceived as an insult, and not even considering the fact that Asuma had something of a nicotine addiction. Finish him off. Kamikiri said to Kajiro, who nodded and seemed to melt into the ground, not disturbing a speck of dust as the technique was performed. Both Kamikiri and Jirobo rushed directly at Asuma, but instead of attacking him as he was prepared for, they ran past him and jumped, scaling the sides of the buildings on opposite sides of the street, getting Asuma to look around as he knew that it was because of what Kajiro's next move would be. The ground then began to move and be sucked in towards a central area as a large pit began to be created. Asuma quickly made his way to the top of a nearby shack, but found that the pit had the force of a landslide as the foundations of the buildings began to loosen and his shack began to be sucked in as well. This is going to destroy every place on the entire block. Asuma thought frantically as he made several hand seals and inhaled sharply while taking aim. Katon, Karyu and Dan, Fire Release, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. Asuma fired off 3 separate flames that roared forth with the head momentarily looking like a dragon's. But all 3 in the end went right into the hole in the middle of the pit, engulfing the opening in flames and stopping the jutsu from tearing up the streets any further. You bastard! Seeing Asuma incinerate anything that possibly could have been at the center of the jutsu that had been destroying that part of town, Jirobo and Kamikiri angrily attacked Asuma simultaneously. Asuma swung wide at both with his chakra blades, and both Oto Ninja thought that he would be parried since the chakra extension was about to make contact with the kunai they were prepared to use against him. They hadn't however known that the chakra extension provided by Hein, Flying Swallow, couldn't be blocked with something as simple as a mass-produced kunai, and Asuma cut right through the iron, bringing the 2 men down at once. And that leaves one. Asuma thought to himself, spitting the useless butt of his cigarette out on the ground. Jounin-san. Asuma turned and had to bite back a yell as he saw Idate running towards him at top speed, actually noting that the boy was very, very fast. That was not very important at the moment though, because right on cue, Kajiro rose from the ground behind Idate and lunged out at the boy to grab a hold of him. Kid, look out. Idate looked befuddled at why he needed to be wary until a hulking presence made itself known behind him. Idate turned around, pulling out a pocket knife from when Asuma had given him warning, and his defensive posture was all that saved him as a kunai was driven into his shoulder and sent him to the ground with blood flowing from the wound. Gah! Idate scooted back away from Kajiro as quickly as he could while holding the hole in his shoulder. Kajiro would have finished him and moved along had Asuma not jumped between him and thrown a trench knife at Kajiro in desperation. Kajiro dodged it, but the spinning weapon was still infused with Asuma's hine and managed to make some sort of contact prior to continuing on after cutting into some flesh and cutting through the wall of another building. With Kajiro down, Asuma grabbed the bleeding Idate and got some distance from the Oto ninja. What in the hell are you doing here? Did something happen to your boss? Can't my team handle it? Idate bit back the pain of his wound long enough to relay the mission. That's the thing. They're fighting someone that's really strong, at the docks on the northern end of town. All of us couldn't take the woman down fighting together. They blew up the ship she was on and it didn't do a thing. How'd you even know I was here? You'd have to be blind, deaf, and dumb to not see or smell the smoke and fire. With a point like that made by the young man around his student's age, Asuma looked back at the building that had been blown apart not too long ago and frowned. Oh. Duh. He then looked back at Kajiro who was still standing, albeit with a considerable wound. Well, I'll finish this and we can head back to the docks. You're still good to go, right? I used to be a ninja. Assured Idate, standing up with a wince. I'm fine. Good. Asuma said, not taking his eyes off of an opponent that had already proven that they would attack a non-combatant if the opportunity arose. You're too powerful, Sarutobi Asuma. The labored breaths of Kajiro gave way to some words as blood dripped onto the ground from the wound that had been inflicted by Asuma's thrown trench knife. I can't get out of this without some sacrifice, the way my comrades sacrificed themselves for my sake. Leave Degarashi port and I don't have to finish this. Asuma said, giving the grotesque-looking shinobi an out. I've killed enough men tonight. I don't want or need to kill one more, but apparently my students are in trouble and I'm not going to waste any more time. Understood. Kajiro said, content with the decision to stay and fight either way. The Fuma clan's worth in the eyes of Otagakure was more important than personal well-being. Kajiro Ninpo, Yotakata, and Lion Ninja Arts, ephemeral. It was like a night and day difference when Kajiro activated the ninjutsu. The reason being because instead of the hunchbacked man with matted down brown hair and buck teeth that he had been fighting the entire time, Kajiro's appearance turned to that of a barefoot beautiful young woman with hazy blue eyes, shoulder-length light green hair, a silver bracelet choker around her neck, and a sleeveless white dress that had one strap over her right shoulder. From her back she had 4 wings comprised of pure chakra looking like the wings of a firefly that allowed her to hover off of the ground in front of Idate and Asuma. Why the hell did that guy turn into a girl? Idate asked, exclaiming in alarm. Kajiro answered sedately, this is my true appearance. The other is my henge that I use as a disguise. Asuma shook his head when he caught himself looking her over. That's one hell of a henge. It didn't dispel even after I injured you. But why transform back now? Because of the jutsu I'm currently using. Kajiro said with the wound from Asuma's last attack bleeding into her white dress. However, she didn't seem to register the pain of the injury or the blood loss whatsoever. It uses too much chakra for me to maintain the transformation any longer. My kinjutsu. Pay close attention, because I can only perform it once, and you will never see anything else again. That didn't sound good, and the chakra that was building up in front of her from the wings on her back certainly didn't look good. Kid. Asuma said Idate as he placed his hands together in the snake seal, I think you should run. I've been running away all damn night. Idate said, holding his pocket knife in his good hand in case he was attacked again. Why not? Heeding Asuma's warning since the first time it saved his life he ran away. Kajiro's chakra buildup was prepared to fire at Asuma until her eyes widened with a pained gasp escaping her lips as her wings began to flicker out and die down, dropping her to the ground. What did you dash? She landed face down to reveal Asuma's trench knife sticking out of her back with the blade stuck inside of her. How? Futon, Surin Repu, wind release, verdant mountains violent wind. Asuma said, holding the snake seal as his trench knife forcefully freed itself from Kajiro's back and floated over to him where he snatched it out of the air. I knew exactly where I threw my trench knife the entire time. Ha! Kajiro laughed bitterly with blood coming from her mouth. We never had a chance. You really are your father's son, Sarutobi Asuma. That's what I'm told. Asuma said, as Idate walked over as well to observe Kajiro's final moments. You fought well. No, I didn't. Kajiro said as her eyes began to close, but it's okay. Guren is the one fighting your students, is she not? The topic of why he was even there in the first place being brought back up, Idate took a worried step towards her. Yeah. That's her name. She uses these strange attacks with crystals, I've never seen anything like it. A bloody cough came from Kajira before she continued from where she left off, then they cannot defeat her. Guren is far stronger than my teammates and myself combined. She could kill us easily. How long did it take you to find us, boy? She asked Idate, who blinked at being addressed. 20 minutes or so. It's too late then. 5 minutes with her would be lucky for anyone. With that, Asuma took off running towards the northern docks, leaving Idate there with Kajiru, who allowed her eyes to close with a content smile on her face as she got a look around the area. Mission complete. She said quietly before ceasing to breathe. What mission? Idate asked her before noticing that she wasn't responding, and her torso wasn't even rising and falling from breathing any longer. Hey. What mission are you talking about here? Who did you kill? What did you steal? How is this a success? He asked in a loud voice before looking around and grunting to himself before taking off running in the direction that Asuma took off and to follow him. Tano-kuni/Hi-no-kuni border area, Chuji and Sakura vs. Kidomaru and Tayuya. Well, that was a complete fucking blast. Tayuya said sarcastically as black marks that had been on her body receded. The same for Kidomaru as they stood over Sakura and Chuji, both of them completely encased in webs from the 8-limbed Oto ninja at Tayuya's side. I can't believe these pieces of trash made us use the seal. That fat fuck almost smashed one of my doki in half. If Kimimaro finds out that we had to tap into the cursed seal to get the win over these guys, then he'll run us into the ground. Kidomaru observed with a smirk as he kicked at one of the webbed bundles. Stupid bitch with her genjutsu. We need to go. Tayuya commented as she heard the bark of dogs getting closer, getting a nod from Kidomaru in return. Seikon better have finished his job, because fighting Hatake fucking Kakashi was not a part of the plan. Both of them then jumped away only for Kakashi and 4 of his dogs to arrive moments later, landing in the clearing with the dogs sitting at the ready for Kakashi's next order. Looking down at the webbed bundles, he narrowed his visible eye. There's got to be some way to get them out of there. The dogs bit at the webbing but were unable to break it as he couldn't cut through it with a kunai either. He quickly formed a chidori and slashed an opening in the webs to find an extensively beaten Sakura and Chuji trapped within. Damn it. Luckily they weren't dead, but they were in rather grave condition. Hopefully the other Kakashi and the rest of the dogs could find Sasuke in better shape. Sasuke vs. Seikon and Yukon. Sasuke was on the ground, a bleeding and swollen mess from the beating he had just sustained from his 2 twin assailants. He tried to crawl away to get enough distance to get back up, but a harsh stomp to his back elicited a yell of pain out of him and stopped that course of action. Do you see? Seikon said in a self-satisfied manner, for all of your gifts and as hard as you train, you'll never reach the level of a real shinobi the way you are now. Your village is soft, not treating you like the weapon you think you were trained to be. Look at us. Orochimaru-sama saw us and imparted us with this gift, our cursed seals. While Seikon was gloating over Sasuke, Yukon stood off to the side impatiently while tapping his foot on the ground before he could hear something approaching rapidly in the distance. You idiot. Hurry up and grab him. We need to go already. Seikon stared up at his brother in an annoyed fashion before scoffing. Fine. You certainly are cranky right after you wake up, aren't you? He then reached down to grab Sasuke to knock him out, but only saw a log in Sasuke's place. Now what the hell is this? When did he substitute himself out? He did it without a trace. An angry Yukon was about to berate his younger twin for his negligence until he saw something from his point of view that Seikon could not. Seikon, you fool, get yourself out of there right now. Run away. Not needing to question his partner and twin after years and years of working together and trusting his judgment, Seikon did just that, right before the explosive tag slapped on the log by Sasuke during his departure exploded with a thunderous blast. Seikon managed to get away with minor burns and shrapnel damage due to the pieces of wood that went flying. Where the hell is he? Did he try to run? Chidori, 1000 birds. The sound of the blast and the settling rumble sound of the aftermath masked the chirping electric noise of Sasuke building chakra for the jutsu, and he showed his chin and chops by taking advantage of that window and attacking Seikon from his blind spot mercilessly. You bastard! Yukon shouted, having leapt towards Sasuke upon seeing him close to attacking Seikon, managed to reach him slightly after he hit Seikon with the Chidori, grabbed Sasuke by the head and slammed him into the ground hard enough to leave an indent of his skull in it. He seethed down at Sasuke before turning to his gravely wounded brother, "You're lucky that it's forbidden to kill you, or we wouldn't have even gone as easy as we did." As Yukon reached Seikon, the injured twin reached out for his brother and their bodies began to join. "You take over for a while, give me some time to heal," Seikon said as he took his spot in what was formerly Yukon's place, his head protruding from the back of his brother's neck as he lay dormant and rested. Once Seikon was settled inside of Yukon's body, Yukon let out an impatient growl, "It's too late for me to take over. We have to go for the second plan," he said before pulling out a syringe with a sickly purple liquid inside. "I personally hope you don't survive this, weakling. I don't see why in the case of our failure of the main objective we give you such a precious gift." He then injected the syringe in the side of the motionless Sasuke's neck. "Then again, I'm not Orochimaru-sama and I refuse to question his orders." With that being done, he beat a hasty retreat since he would not be able to escape with Sasuke while being pursued by one like Hatake Kakashi. Of this he was certain, especially with his lack of stamina due to his inactivity within Seikon most of the time. He raced to the link-up point meant to rendezvous with Kidomaru, Tayuya, and Jirobo, though he doubted the latter was alive if Kakashi managed to break away. The only thing that could be heard in the area at that point was Sasuke's struggling and unconscious breathing, the nocturnal animals in the forest, and the barking of Kakashi's dogs as they got closer, eventually culminating with the four of them and Kakashi landing in the clearing, sniffing at Sasuke before the smallest of the dogs, a pug with a Konoha headband and a blue jacket on, spoke up, "There were others here. Should we go after them?" "No," Kakashi said as he knelt by Sasuke and checked over his injuries. The boy wasn't conscious, but there was pain evident on his face as he writhed even while completely out of it. "We need to take them all back to Konoha as fast as we can. I don't know if the other me found Chuji and Sakura or not, so let's find them and link up so we can leave. Pakun, I want you to head out ahead back to the village to tell them to expect wounded." The small pug immediately took off to head home in advance as Kakashi picked Sasuke up and put him over his back before following the rest his dogs to find the other dogs, the other Kakashi, and the students that had been separated. Sasuke was more than stable enough to transport, so he got right on the move again. In his haste to ensure that all of his students were alright, Kakashi did not register the small black marks on the back left of Sasuke's neck as anything more than bruises at the time, but as he carried the boy the bruise turned into 3 tomo, almost like that of the Sharingan. Cha no Kuni, Northern Docks of Degarashi Port, Naruto vs. Guren. "This is a blast, kid," Guren said as for the umpteenth time in Naruto's growing rampage the only thing that stopped him from shattering her jaw with a punch was a wall of crystals that she formed to block him. "A Jinchuriki like you can be as mediocre as they want as long as they've got this power to back them up. Isn't that right? Shut your mouth." Naruto roared at Guren angrily, the force of his action blowing her hair around wildly and getting her to take a step back as a shockwave produced by the intensity of his chakra flew at her. Guren moved her hands to try and encase Naruto's immediate area in crystal again, but the fleet-footed young Jinchuriki, boosted by the inhuman chakra flowing through his system, had his senses enhanced and avoided the attack to get closer to the Otagaku or shinobi. A punch aimed at her pretty face whiffed, but the force behind the punch that didn't land managed to shove Guren off balance. "My Kami, this kid is a total diehard," Guren thought, gritting her teeth at having to deal with a growingly berserk demon container. She got away from him to get more space, getting another feral-sounding roar of anger from Naruto. "I'm pissing him off even more. Why won't he just stay down already?" She had blasted him plenty of times, but he just kept hopping right back up for more each time. Tajuyo Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. Guren jumped, leapt, and sprang until she stood atop a warehouse looking over a veritable platoon of Kyuubi-enhanced Naruto clones, and a sneer grew on her face. "You're such a parasite," she shouted down at him before making 4 hand seals and slamming her hands on the roof. "Die. Shouten, Suishao Urkihaki no Jin, Crystal Release, Jade Crystal Wall 8th Formation." The ground quivered and shook as the concrete on the ground in front of her split and uprose a massive amount of crystal, encasing every one of Naruto's dozen clones and suspending them in the translucent mineral until they dispelled. As she looked at what she had just done, there was no sign of the real Naruto trapped inside after all of the fakes had vanished. There wasn't any sign of Shikamaru or Ino, which didn't make sense because even if they weren't dead they were unable to move, especially fast enough to avoid such a wide area affecting ninjutsu. A pair of hands crashed through the roof of the warehouse and grabbed Guren's ankles before Naruto's entire body burst through the roof, and another, as multiple Naruto clones emerged through the hole linking to one another by grabbing each clone's ankles. The last Naruto stood up on the roof after all the clones came through the hole and he prepared to slam his heavy chain of clones to the ground, Bunshin Kyuzeri no Karatagachin, clone chain body slam. Like hell you stupid brat. His grip was like iron, and Guren couldn't wrest her legs out of his grasp, but she still had access to her hands and that was more than enough to escape as she recreated her arm blade of crystal and cut through the Naruto clone hanging onto her to fling her into the air above the roof. You've got nothing on me. Shishao Tenketsu, pressure points of harm and death. Chakra exploded from her body, enough to be visible to the naked eye before a prism of crystal formed around her. Die. Shouten, is Hikomayu, crystal release, string of glory. From the front tip of the crystal prism, Guren channeled her visibly powerful chakra into a powerful beam of light that fired from it like a laser and annihilated Naruto's chain of clones before blasting Naruto himself right through the roof of the warehouse, forcing the roof to collapse inward on top of him. She laughed at the destruction her one move had wrought and continued firing extra blasts. One after the other, adding on useless damage to the already thoroughly wrecked building. The crystal she was in eventually landed on the ground and neatly broke around her, depositing her there casually. With a bead of sweat on her brow, Guren dusted her gloved hands off and smirked one last time at the scene before choosing to walk away. There, she said as she walked towards the massive crystal construct she had used to overcome Naruto's clones on the way to the water, get up from that. She formed her blade crystal wheel around herself and used it to effortlessly travel on the water, planning on heading back to base to report on her accomplished mission. Geto would have to be pleased with how low prices in the town would be after all of the havoc that had gone on that night. And the more pleased he was the more business he would give Otagakure, the more he would pay for the next missions, and the more concessions he would grant her master. Orochimaru-sama should be pleased with this job well done. A few minutes later. In the destroyed remains of the warehouse there was no motion to be seen until a piece of what used to be part of the building's wall shook slightly and was finally shoved aside by a gravely injured Naruto, back to normal with no more Kyuubi's chakra running through him. His body was ravaged with wounds. The glass on his goggles had been shattered, blood caked his arms and legs, his entire frame was smudged with grime, and he just couldn't take any more. His Chunin flak jacket actually endured the damage better than he had. It was definitely made of some sturdy stuff. He spared a glance back at what else had been under the slab of wall with him and he managed to spare a small smile at seeing that if nothing else Ino and Shikamaru weren't any worse off than they were before. With that bit of peace he could spare himself he dropped to his knees and eventually outright collapsed onto his face. Naruto, did we win? Naruto opened his eyes back up once he heard Shikamaru's weak voice to signify that he was awake. No. He replied tiredly, are you alright? I'm great. Sarcastically spoke Shikamaru, barely able to crawl forward, I love bleeding to death on concrete. At least we've got a view of the ocean to die to. Maybe the sunrise will make the clouds look better? That would be a good sight to leave with. Kami, will you stop complaining? Making herself in her own alert state known with that remark, Ino could move her limbs but not with enough energy to actually move her entire body. You're such a bellyacher. Can't you even die with some semblance of cool? Give us an epic one-liner if you're going to waste energy talking. Troublesome. Not epic. So all of them were alive enough to banter back and forth. That was a better ending than had originally been expected when Naruto first saw Guren cut them down. A small victory to take with the defeat, that at least they were all alive for now. God damn it, you stupid brats better be in one piece. Hearing the grizzled and older voice not belonging to any of the Chunin trio, they figured it to be their Jounin sensei and were proven right when he saw them while running through the destruction, Asuma sensei. Naruto managed to get out, loud enough to echo in the fading night, over here. It didn't take long after that for the man and Idate to come across them, with the eldest shinobi rushing to the bleeding Shikamaru and Ino while Idate went to Naruto who had managed to push himself against a piece of a broken crate, unable to move upward any further. What the hell happened here? Idate asked Naruto as he made sure he was set upright and in no danger of falling to the side. Did that ninja you were fighting do all of this? Naruto for once wanted to say it was him. He wanted to say that the cursed chakra that ran through his system as naturally as his own from time to time did all of this. It would have meant that he had given just as good or worse than he had gotten. But he didn't say that, because he couldn't. He and his had been thoroughly crushed by one shinobi between the three of them, by the strongest person he had ever fought, going all out without a demon inside of them. Trying to lift his hand to one of the pockets of his vest ended in failure, and Idate saw his attempted motion. After reaching into Naruto's vest pocket in his stead and pulling out a mashed pack of cigarettes and a lighter, he lifted an eyebrow and gave Naruto a strange look. Really? You smoke these? You know that these can kill you, don't you? Naruto didn't say a word, just letting the setting that they were in and the condition of his body sink into Idate's awareness to prove his unspoken point for him. With a nod of begrudging acknowledgement, Idate pulled out a slightly bent cigarette and put it in Naruto's mouth to assist him. You can't win 'em all. Just be grateful you are not dead right now. Asuma said to Ino and Shikamaru barely within Naruto's earshot. Once it was lit, Naruto took a puff and breathed it out with a defeated sigh before sinking his head forward and dropping into unconsciousness, the cigarette falling from his maws instead of Asuma's words of consolation as he tried to stabilize Ino and Shikamaru's wounds. One last mocking voice stuck with him in his head from the very depths of his mind. Just as pathetic as I thought. Chapter 37, What Are Friends For? An innate hatred of anything hospital-related sat deeply within Naruto's mind. A hospital meant that you were injured badly enough to require medical attention. Getting beaten that badly was usually associated with defeat. And man, did he ever suffer a defeat. It almost took him back to when he was in the academy. That had been the very last time he had been overcome so completely when it mattered. He had forgotten how terrible it felt. He had even fallen out of the practice of pasting a smile on his face to trudge through the bad feelings that came with it. Someone who said that you learn more from failure than from victory, had either never failed and was bored with success, or failed so much that they came up with an excuse for themselves. Naruto lifted his head off of his pillow and slammed it back into it hard just to feel and hear the thump. Doctors told him he was cleared to leave later that day and it couldn't come fast enough for his tastes. He had been there for 2 days. That was 36 hours more than he cared to be there for, and that was only because he was unconscious for the first 12. No surgery had been required as the bulk of his most severe damage had been handled by his internal protector when Asuma had been racing him and his team back to Konoha. How he did so by himself, at least as far as Naruto knew from his place stuck in bed, Naruto had no idea, but he had more important things to dwell on. The door to his room opened and in walked Jiraiya, much to Naruto's delight. Ero-sensei. He said excitedly upon seeing the tall white-haired shinobi, what are you doing here? I'm training you, remember dumbass. Jiraiya said amusedly, chuckling at the corresponding pout on Naruto's face, I heard you were on the ass end of an ass-kicking. So how'd that feel? He asked, his mood sobering up upon asking his question. Not only did Jiraiya's mood take a nosedive, but Naruto's budding good mood sank right back into the mud and the muck as well. How do you think? I used the Kyuubi's chakra and I still lost the fight. Guren beat all 3 of us down. So she was strong enough to take all 3 of you? Jiraiya asked, taking a seat on the windowsill by Naruto's bed and looking out the open window. Was she the strongest person you've ever fought? Other than you, yeah. But I don't think you count. You weren't trying to kill me. Jiraiya nodded, still looking out the window as the birds chirped. Well, I've got some bad news for you then. I should have told you earlier, but you had enough on your plate with the Chunin exams, and then you had gotten promoted and I wanted you to get some time to get that out of your head. Now though, it seems a better time than before to bring this up. In the near future there are going to be 10 bona fide badasses of the criminal shinobi world coming for you. This wasn't going to be brought up if it wasn't important. Naruto knew that much from simply the tone of speech Jiraiya used. Now when you call them badasses, I mean that they'll make the person you fought look like you when you were fighting that person. Jiraiya explained, top class S-rank criminals or so I've heard. Their movements are clandestine and you have no idea how hard it was to get that much info on them. All I know for certain is that my old arch-bastard of a teammate claimed membership with them, and that should be scary enough that they were able to kick him out and still exist. the hateful son of a dash dot. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Naruto cut him off with wide eyes. Are you kidding me? They're that strong and these guys are coming after me? What the hell are they doing coming after me? Did my mom piss them off or something when she was alive? If the moment weren't so serious, Jiraiya probably would have burst out laughing since the possibility of something like that happening wasn't out of the realm of actuality at all. Kushina probably did have some kind of hit out on herself when she was alive and kicking. That was neither here nor there though. It's not anything personal about you per se. It's what you have inside of you that they want. Naruto looked down at his belly and frowned. Damn it, it always comes back to you, doesn't it? He looked up at Jiraiya with a displeased expression on his face. What the hell would anyone even want with this thing anyway? It sucks. He then held his head after being swatted on the head with a paper fan. Ow. What the hell, I'm supposed to be getting out today. Don't hit me. Then don't ask dumbass questions. Jiraiya replied, slipping the paper fan back into his kimono shirt. It doesn't matter why, and whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. As you are now, you can't beat them. Not even close. Kyuubi or not. Naruto grabbed a tight hold of the covers and looked at his legs while he was in the bed. Why are you telling me this? What am I going to do? He looked up at Jiraiya somewhat expectantly. You came here to tell me what I'm going to do, aren't you? I'm going to train you. Jiraiya said, reaching out and putting a hand on the boy's shoulder, and by the time I'm done with you, you'll be a complete terror. Your surname will be just as scary as it used to be in the old days, back when the name Uzumaki roughly translated to, you'd better think twice about getting into this fight. He saw Naruto's face perk up and decided it was time to drive home the final point, but I want you to go and take the job to become a guardsman. Surprise showed as clear as day on Naruto's face. You do? I thought you said you didn't care and that it was my choice. I've had time to go through this with some of the people that care about you one way or another, Sarutobi-sensei and your own sensei Asuma. Jiraiya said, standing up to pace around the room. I was going to take you on a long trip around the region, but this way I can make sure you get tested from time to time with a mission and it can help build your reputation as well. I still don't know. Naruto said, thunking himself on the head to try and clear his mind. What if someone dash? Kid, if this didn't get it through your head, I don't know what will. Jiraiya said with his arms crossed. I told you already that the village won't stop if you leave, it's still going to be here when you get back. It doesn't revolve around you, you revolve around it. You just got beat. Bad. That's not even the strongest person you're going to fight in your life. So if anything actually happened that could threaten the overall village, what could you in particular do to stop it that your sensei couldn't? Take the job, get his money, get a life experience, train hands-on with Jiraiya, come back home after his contract expires, and he'll be good to go from then on out. That was basically the gist of the point Jiraiya was trying to express. But could he really just cut and run like that? Would it really be that simple? For better or for worse, Konoha was his home and always had been. Could he leave it and fight for another the way he knew he would fight for Konoha in a heartbeat? Ero-sensei. I don't feel comfortable about just leaving my friends behind without a clue. It's not right. Who says you have to just clear out and head straight there? You have 5.5 months. Jiraiya's reasoning seemed to plant a major seed in Naruto's head. He was really thinking on it, harder than before. Konoha wasn't built in a day, so he'd take that push for now. He reached out for Naruto again to tell him to get dressed so he could get him discharged and grab him a bite to eat of actual food when he was stopped by Naruto's voice. I'll go. Naruto said quickly in case he would rescind his own decision halfway through. If you, Hokage, and Asuma-sensei think it would be good for me, I think it'll be okay. How on earth was he going to break that to Ino and Shikamaru? He was not looking forward to that conversation. Nara clan compound, Shikamaru's house. Sitting on his front porch with Asuma and a shogi board between them was Shikamaru. He had nothing on his torso other than fresh bandages from that morning as he and his sensei were locked in a heated game. After making his next move and while waiting for Shikamaru to make his, Asuma decided to make some conversation. I'll tell you this now. Naruto's going to take the daimyo job. I'll do what I can to make sure he knows what to expect, and hey, maybe one day he can end up an elite like me before his contract expires. Why are you telling me this? Shikamaru said with a sigh, scratching the side of his bandaged chest. There really isn't much you can say to make me decide one way or the other, Asuma. Now if he were a woman he could just nag and bitch him into leaving, but even his mother wasn't trying to push him into making a decision one way or another. I'm telling you this because Naruto's going to leave. Shikamaru's eyes panned up from where they had previously been on the shogi board to Asuma's eyes as he stared at the man. He's already made his choice? Why didn't he tell me? Why haven't you two told Ino? With that reply, Shikamaru's eyes left attempting to stare a hole in his Jonin-sensei. I don't know if he's made his choice or not. I'm just saying that one way or the other Naruto's going to leave. Jiraiya-sama is going to take Naruto with him on a training trip if he turns down the offer. The trip was actually scheduled to happen within a few weeks if Naruto had declined the job, but I like the idea of him and you as a guard. A position like that can eventually end up with you becoming one of his elites and a member of the 12 Guardian Ninja. Joining them made me the man I am now, so I'd highly recommend it. So if we go, me and Naruto will end up a pair of chain-smoking guys that are whipped by their women. I am not whipped by Kurenai. I never said anything about her, did I? Damn it. Another thought sprang to Shikamaru's mind. Why is there a training trip planned for Naruto? Yeah, they lost, but was that a reason to go into panic mode? Maybe it was since Naruto was their Jinchuriki and him losing couldn't really be a regular thing if every village eventually found out who he was. It was a requiem for summoning other Jinchuriki containing villages to mess with them even though it had been televised that he had defeated 2 others. It's not like after that beatdown Guren's going to be coming after us or something. What about a group that would make what Guren did look tame by comparison? Asuma said, staring Shikamaru dead in the eyes. There's a group out there that wants Naruto's Kyuubi, and they'll be coming for him at any time. If he works as a guard that can buy him some time to train while being a nameless face in the crowd of the daimyo's employ instead of as a ninja in a place where he can be found more often than not. If he actually becomes elite enough to be heard of while working for him, it won't matter anymore, will it? It will prove that he's ready for them. A group coming after his friend. Shikamaru doubted that taking the Kyuubi from Naruto would end with only that blight on the blonde boy's soul leaving him. There would be some actual damage done to him to say the very least, maybe even death with their luck. Only Shikamaru, Asuma, the Hokage, Jiraiya, and Naruto himself knew of the possibility of Naruto becoming a guard, so that actually would buy him some time since this group didn't know how to find him. As things currently stood, Naruto was the equivalent of a rare animal stuck in a nature preserve with poachers after him. Speaking of which, does this group have a name? Shikamaru asked, finally moving the piece of his choice on the board. Akatsuki is what Jiraiya-sama called them. With the game back underway, Asuma's eyes and the majority of his focus went back to the board. He implied that if things went south even while I was around I couldn't protect him, so I signed off on him teaching Naruto. He's going to try and steer Naruto towards taking the job in the end. Shikamaru let out an unintelligible grunt and the two sat in silence as they continued to play. A pronounced frown slowly growing on the Jounin's face as it progressed. Checkmate. Shikamaru said, getting up off of the ground with a sound of effort as he held his bandaged wound. That one was actually hard to win this time. Holding back a childish urge to flip the board and storm off, Asuma nodded and lit himself a cigarette as a consolation prize. I'm going to beat you one of these days, I know I will. There was no way a kid was good enough to decisively beat him each and every single time. He begrudgingly packed up the board as he had only really come to see how Shikamaru's recovery was going after doing the same for Ino, and prepared to head off until Shikamaru's voice stopped him at his front door. I'm taking the job. Shikamaru suddenly uttered as he seemed to be looking out at the forest that his clan's property sat on. I'm going. 5 months, right? He asked, turning his head to a stunned-looking Asuma who only nodded dumbly. All right then. Thanks for stopping by. With that, Shikamaru went inside and shut the door only to find his parents sitting in the living room getting him to palm his face. You both heard that, didn't you? Shikamaru's mother Yoshino nodded and walked towards her son before engulfing him in a hug. I'm so proud that at least my son has a bit of a sense of ambition. You sure didn't get that from your father. She let the embarrassed Shikamaru go with a pat on the head to leave the room. It was better than being scolded at least. Shikaka simply got up out of his chair and headed towards the back of the house. So you're really taking that job? Shikamaru nodded without hesitation. Well, as much of pain as it's going to be, I can't exactly let you go off unprepared. This was now officially more trouble than it was worth as far as Shikamaru was concerned. Now? You want to train now? I'm still hurt here. It's not going to re-aggravate your injuries, so come on. Even with his father's request, Shikamaru quickly measured the merits of running up to his room and shutting himself in for the next 5 months until the older Nara spoke up. I could always tell your mother that you're shirking on training. As he walked towards the backyard, Shikamaru felt that uttering the word troublesome out loud just didn't sum up his feelings on the situation. Konoha Hospital. Through observational glass, 3 high-ranking shinobi looked into a room at Uchiha Sasuke, who happened to be sedated at the moment. In addition to the Hokage himself, there happened to be the Jonin sensei of the boy, Hatake Kakashi, and someone with experience on what was currently afflicting the boy, Mitarashi Anko. And she had her own opinions on the matter. This is going to be more trouble than it's worth. Anko said cautiously, her eyes never tearing away from the black mark on Sasuke's neck. If we kill him now, it would be something of a mercy, because right now I can tell you that all the sedatives in the world aren't making that damn thing hurt any less, and he'll still probably die, and if he wakes up it'll be leading to a whole list of problems that no one wants to deal with. No one is killing him, Anko. Kakashi said, not glaring at the woman since he knew of her own past issues with the seal on his student's neck. First Itachi tries to incite Sasuke again during the exams, and now Orochimaru was poking his head around him as well. This is manageable. Or are you saying that we should have killed you when you came back with your seal? She noticeably flinched and her hand went to her own neck where she had been branded. Hiruzen nodded. He was not about to kill a young shinobi in his employ, especially when other measures could be taken first. I think it is more disconcerting than anything that Orochimaru has ties with the new village Otagakure, since this is noticeably his work. A grim look stood on the face of the old man. A man like Orochimaru with an entire fighting force at his back, and from the reports of young Chuji and Sakura, in addition to what my own son told me of his mission, they are rather formidable. A bitter scoff left Anko. What the hell would a man like that possibly want with leading a hidden village? People to filch new jutsu from, maybe. Or he probably has them so he can kidnap people to experiment on for free, sick fuck. And the daimyo of that country signed off on letting him do as he pleases? Nobles are so spineless. Whatever purpose Orochimaru had for building his own village was definitely not for the benefit of any large group of people at all. It was all for Orochimaru, and he would be the only one that got anything positive out of the endeavor. Tanokuni, Otagakure base. You've done very good work, Guren. Orochimaru said as the woman in question bowed in front of him. Even with the damage done to the property he owned, Gato was still very pleased by the extent to which prices in Degarashi port fell. He'll have a heavy economic influence over that region within the year if he has learned from his mistakes in Nami no Kuni. It was easy enough, Orochimaru-sama. Guren said with a satisfied smirk. It actually wasn't all that easy. The preparation for the final jutsu she performed on Naruto took quite a toll on what chakra she had left. If she had run into Sarutobi Asuma before leaving, she probably would not have won that ensuing battle and would have fallen to the fate of the Fuma clan members that died by the man's hand. Such a strong shinobi with a valuable bloodline. Orochimaru licked his lips, imagining having her Shouten bloodline for his own personal use, just like Kimimura's. She was certainly top 2 for a replacement body if he was forced to switch before securing his clear and blatant first choice. The Sound 4 had not managed to bring him Sasuke due to Jirobo's foolish insistence on fighting Kakashi to get a bite to eat, in the manner of absorbing the man's chakra. He paid the price with his life in a quick and embarrassing fashion. And at least in the end the secondary objective was achieved when Yukon, standing in for his injured brother, reported that the finished cursed seal of heaven was successfully applied to Uchiha Sasuke. That was something. And if he survived, which Kabuto would report to him on, it would be worth watching and waiting until the moment when Sasuke was ripe for the picking. Especially if he came to enjoy the power that the seal would give him. He would need Orochimaru to unlock the seal's full potential, and that would be where that particular story ended. Kabuto's main mission while in Konoha was to monitor this. There was a chance that he could get Kabuto to kidnap Sasuke while he was out cold from the seal's application, but the boy would be steadily watched during that period, and having to deal with Sasuke after he awakened would not be advisable even for someone like Kabuto. Let Konoha deal with that issue. I'm thinking of sending you to coordinate the main effort of our more clandestine operations in Mizu no Kuni. Orochimaru informed Guren matter-of-factly, I believe that with your special ability to capture complete specimens you will be perfect for helping the Mizukage with his bloodline problem and for helping ourselves to their bloodlines. With the newer arrangement with Geto, and with him having a way to get back into the transit across the seas, a dual arrangement was worked. Otogakuer would supply security for Geto's overseas smuggling and regular transport, and in return Geto would let him use the same ships to bring ninja into Mizu no Kuni when he began his deal with the Mizukage, as well as letting him use them to bring the bloodline shinobi they managed to capture with them upon the ship's extradition from the islands. Hey, Geto was into human trafficking anyway. That was one of his criminal activities. He clearly had no problem with it, thus neither did Orochimaru. Better for the both of them. Guren nodded before glowering, I've heard that you have an interest in the Konoha shinobi Uchiha Sasuke. That burned her up inside. Someone that wasn't even loyal to Orochimaru and didn't comprehend or understand how great he was would get the honor of housing his existence one day soon. She would rather it be someone like Kimimaro if it weren't her. Don't fret, my dear. Orochimaru said in a sickly sweet, patronizingly consoling manner, even without becoming my vessel you are still one of my best and brightest. Your skills are valued by me. So don't worry about any of that. Of course, Orochimaru-sama. Serving this man's whims put a smile on her face. Someone that found value in her talents and saw fit to reward her with the prestige he gave her in his organization, so you wish for me to prepare to head to Mizu no Kuni. Orochimaru nodded with his usual smirk on his face, yes, but feel free to take your time with your preparations. The campaign will not begin for quite a while. Handpick those you wish to bring and everything else along those lines. I feel that this will be a very vital endeavor we will be undertaking. Konohagakuer no Sato, Yamanaka clan compound, Ino's house. Ino sat in her bed with her hair loose, wearing a pair of purple pajamas with a smile on her face. Thank you for coming and visiting me, Goldie-kun. It was very sweet of you, she said as she bad her eyes at Naruto. Her fellow blonde was sitting a few feet away in a chair by the desk in her room wearing a grey shirt with the Konoha symbol on it and an orange pair of shorts with blue trim. Having never been in Ino's room before, Naruto found that it was very girly. And that was the only opinion he could give since he could not objectively observe his teammate's room with his lack of experience around girls to this extent. The only other girl's room he'd ever been in had been Shiho's, and he was sure that it wasn't normal for one to have a sea of books lining their floor from wall to wall. But then again, was it normal to have a large purple rug under one's bed, purple bedding, and it just went onward from there? Well, I'm just happy that you're alright. Naruto told her with a happy look on his face that went along with the tone he used and the message he conveyed. I can't believe they let you guys go home and kept me in the hospital though. He sounded rather put out by the latter fact. Ino giggled at the look on his face and told him why. It's because we've got people here to keep their eyes on us and because Shika's clan makes good medicine. The two of our clans are so close we're supplied from them directly sometimes. If I was still hurt I'd still be in the hospital. You guys are so lucky. Naruto held his broken goggles in his hands, running his fingers over the broken glass of the lenses. He'd had them for almost 5 years and they'd gotten smashed in a fight. Ino watched Naruto's attitude over his busted eyewear and shook her head. What are you going to do with those if you're still carrying them around with you? Are you going to get them fixed? The head of Naruto snapped up from looking at his goggles to looking at Ino confusedly. Oh, well, they were still with the stuff the doctors took from me when I was in the hospital. I was just going to try and buy another pair. It was just fortunate that Jiraiya had broken into his apartment and had brought him a change of clothes or he'd have been wearing either bloody rags or a hospital gown out of there. His goggles were still caked with his own dried blood. They now were gross in addition to being broken. I don't know why I didn't just chuck these into the trash or something. His attention was then captured when he saw Ino hold her hand out expectantly. Well, give them to me then. I'll get them fixed and if you get a new pair I'll just keep them for myself. You'd wear goggles, Ino-chan? Hell no. The thought was simply ludicrous to Ino. She'd never wear those damn things in a million years. That wasn't why she wanted them. Then what are you going to do with them? A deep red flush sprang to Ino's face as she thought of how weird it sounded in her own head to ask for Naruto's busted eyewear. Kami, I sound like a total creep right now. What the hell is wrong with me? Naruto clearly didn't seem to be thinking along the same lines as his attention was diverted to looking at the pictures of the team that Ino had on her desk, the stunned expressions on their face after they had gotten their first mission, and a picture of them in the hospital at the same time after the end of the Chunin exams. Thank goodness for the small miracles that Naruto's attention span provided from time to time. Apparently Naruto didn't even care about getting the answer to his question any longer as he just set the goggles on Ino's desk absent-mindedly. With the subject dropped, Ino cleared her throat and awkwardly smoothed out the covers of the bed she happened to be sitting in before getting a devious idea in her head while her parents insisted on her staying bedridden for the time being. It's so good to see a friendly face, Goldie-kun, but why are you all the way over there? You can come closer, you know. Come on, she said, patting an open spot next to her on her bed for him to sit on. Naruto shrugged and got up to sit on Ino's bed, his eyes widening as he took his seat, legs off of the side of it. Wow. Your bed is way better than mine, he said, bouncing on the mattress in a testing manner. Your mattress is probably super expensive. Want to test it out for real? Ino asked before noticing Naruto's face turn red and how that sounded. She thumped him hard on the shoulder and rolled her eyes. Not like that, pervert. I meant, do you want to take a nap? You look dog-tired. And you're asking me to sleep in your bed? Naruto said with a deadpan expression. I've slept in your bed like a dozen times already, reasoned Ino offhandedly. Without me in it. Whenever Team 10 met at Naruto's apartment after the team training during the Chunin exams period, Ino would usually crash in Naruto's bed for an hour or two to get some rest while Naruto and Shikamaru would hang out in the front room. Naruto had never ventured into his room while Ino had been there since after Shikamaru had tried to do so once to beat her to the bed and get some sleep of his own. She kicked him right out. He was not about to let that happen to himself. Even if it was his own house, Ino could be scary bossy. Oh, stop being so timid, you big baby. Ino snapped, getting Naruto to recoil in alarm. What about the night before the last rounds of the Chunin exam? You were just fine with it then. Nope. No way. What happens in Tetsu no Kuni stays in Tetsu no Kuni. Naruto was certainly not willing to flip his thoughts on the matter, especially with Ino's father downstairs. The man was a better censor than he would ever be in his opinion. No chance was he going to crawl into Ino's bed and risk getting his mind jumbled for life by some secret Yamanaka clan kinjutsu. They had to have at least one, right? And just what happened in Tetsu no Kuni? Damn it, speak of the devil. Both Naruto and Ino's eyes slowly panned towards her door and saw Inoichi standing there leaning against the doorframe with an expectant look on his face. The two then turned towards each other with Ino giving Naruto a pointed look that he could just see was screaming at him. Why the hell didn't you sense him coming? I can't sense things through walls and closed doors. Naruto thought to himself as if Ino could hear him yelling in his own mind. Apparently she could read it off his facial expression as she puffed her cheeks out indignantly and looked away from him. If you want a better goddamn censor, get a Hyuga or find Kiba. Well, are you two going to stare at each other all afternoon or are you going to answer my question? Inoichi said again, getting their attention back onto him. You're obviously not talking about anything that happened during the tournament since it was all televised. So what happened in Tetsu no Kuni? He then focused his gaze on Naruto with a stern glance. You should just go ahead and tell me now. I'm just going to find out later anyway. A month of training and hanging out with Jiraiya had taught Naruto quite a few things. How to begin to deal with someone stronger than you, a few ninjutsu for his trouble, that when you get beat up by a group of women you can either cover your face or your junk but never both. He had even begun to subconsciously glean a few other things, but the thing he had learned from Jiraiya that stuck out at the moment was simple. Do not ever let on to a girl's dad that you're interested in the girl or have had some kind of intimate moment with her. Ever. It's just always going to end badly for two of the three of you. Why are you telling me this, Ero-sensei? And how would you know anyway? Just shut up and listen, Gaki. If anyone knows romance, it's me. I'm teaching you a life lesson here. The cuter the girl, the more protective the dad will be. And they're bulldog tenacious. Trust me, it's a total pain. When the hell am I ever going to use this? With a teammate like yours, I'd say there's a good chance you will. What was that? Nothing, now get back to work. Before the silence became palpable, Ino began laughing sheepishly and reached behind where she was on the bed. Oh, we were just talking about the day before the tournament started when Goldie-kun won like a billion prizes at the festival. She picked up a small pig wallet from her nightstand and held it up prominently. See? He won this and gave it to me. I was just wondering what he did with the rest of the stuff he won. I gave most of it away, remember? Naruto said, picking up on Ino's escape topic and going along with it before blinking once something sprang to mind. Wait, you still have that? I thought you got all upset when I gave it to you, like I was making fun of you or something. Why wouldn't she have kept it? Giving Naruto a confused look, Ino responded, it was a gift. It's still a nice thing either way about it. I won't throw out your stupid pig wallet just because it's a bad joke on my name. She then let out a smile and shoved Naruto a bit playfully from behind. It matches that frog wallet of yours too, so why wouldn't I walk around with it? And then it was something like a shark smelling blood. In the course of the rapport that had seemingly been established right in front of his eyes, Inoichi plucked Naruto up by the back of his shirt and wordlessly carried him out of the room, much to Ino and Naruto's confusion, and then to Naruto's horror when he put this together with what he had been told by Jiraiya. Ino was indeed sitting awfully close to him, on her bed, in her pajamas, with the door closed. As a matter of fact, she had moved to where he was sitting with his back between her legs, almost like he could pick her up piggyback style right from where they were. Apparently that was danger close. Being stuck with the number 2 in Konoha's torture and interrogation force was not anyone's idea of fun, only being below the extremely imposing Marino Ibiki in that department. I like you, Naruto. Inoichi said, much to Naruto's surprise once he put him back down at the foot of the stairs. You've been a very good teammate and friend to Ino, and you're an impressive young man for quite a few reasons. But, Naruto thought to himself, nodding despite the fact that he had heard such a start to a conversation to know full well that this was not the extent of what Inoichi had to say to him. But, Inoichi continued, going right along with Naruto's expectations, I will give you the same speech that I gave Shikamaru when I found out that he was teamed with Ino, and the same speech I gave Chuji back when I thought he'd have been teamed with Ino like the way their fathers and I were. He put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and took a breath. Ino is a very capable young ninja and she's only going to get stronger over time. That I am not worried about at all. Naruto's face lit up with a big grin. It wasn't like Inoichi was saying anything Naruto didn't already know. Yeah, I know Ino-chan's good. I wish I had some of the jutsu that she knows how to do. They're really cool. Naruto's grin then slowly dropped when he felt Inoichi's grip on his shoulder slowly tighten. What I am worried about though, is her trust being taken advantage of by the young male influences in her life. She trusts you absolutely, Naruto, do you understand that? A slow and deliberate nod came from a wide-eyed Naruto. Why is this happening to me? I didn't do anything. Then you also understand that this means that I trust you absolutely as well. A deceptive smile that gave Naruto a chill down his spine appeared on Inoichi's face. Now, being that I am well aware of who you're being taught hands-on by and the more extracurricular activities that he happens to be known for, I would like you to remember to keep your hands and eyes to yourself. Remember, I can read your or Ino's mind if I suspect any funny business. Hands to myself. No acting like Ero-sensei around Ino at all. Got it. Naruto said with a shaky thumbs up. Damn Jiraiya and the stigma that came with being his student. It was almost as over-encompassing as the fox in his stomach. Please don't break my brain with a crazy Yamanaka kinjutsu. A look of surprise came over Inoichi's face. Naruto, I would never do such a thing to a comrade of Konoha. A relieved expression made itself known on Naruto's face after hearing that. Ibiki would though, and I could just force your body to go to him directly, so there's that. The thought of being pressured by Ibiki put a frightened look on Naruto's face, and that seemed to satisfy Inoichi. If we're clear, then you can go back in with Ino. Naruto did just that, with heavy and slow footsteps. Yeah. I'm a good father. One day later, field by the waterfall. Both Naruto and Jiraiya sat, silently trying to meditate in the middle of the empty field. On this day, with summer pretty much at an end and with the women that had been frolicking there no longer going out as the weather began to chill enough to where it would no longer be comfortable. Even in a place with compliable weather like Hinokuni, it did get a little cold in later months. Naruto was back in his usual attire of the zipped-up orange short-sleeved windbreaker and orange shorts, both with blue trim, blue arm warmers, his headband in a bandana-like style around his neck, and a new pair of goggles on his forehead with orange tint that one could actually see his eyes through, just not the color of them. The bloodlust you feel when you tap into the Kyuubi's chakra is a limitation. Jiraiya stated out of the blue, though Naruto didn't turn towards him or even register that he had heard him. You were still overmatched and you should have known that not too long after resuming your battle. You just wanted to get that Guren person back for what she had done to you and your friends, didn't you? Again Naruto didn't answer, but his face twitched to let on that he understood what Jiraiya was saying. He knew that his teammates were hurt, and he had originally told himself that he just wanted to hit Guren once to get her back. Once was enough to beat her, he had figured. After all, who could stand up to the power of a demonically fueled haymaker? Well, now apparently he knew that there were at least 11 people that could. Or 12 if he included Jiraiya, or 13 if he considered the Hokage. That old man had to be tough to still be Hokage. And then there was Asuma, and Naruto figured he could beat him too when using his chakra shroud. His frown deepened as he kept thinking about other stronger people he probably knew that could take advantage of his own berserker fighting style when he used the Kyuubi's chakra, calling me weak, you make me weak. He could hear a hateful growl from the back of his head, but he couldn't care any less about it. What could the Kyuubi do? It held back chakra from him intentionally to torment him and belittle him the last time. You say that now. But the moment you need to crush your enemies, to end their lives before they end yours, we'll just see where you choose to hang your hat. You'll see that no matter how hard you try, your powers and abilities as a human simply pale in comparison to that of a Biju. Your best will never come close to touching my very worst. The bad part of meditation that Naruto despised aside from the boring part of it all. With such a clear mind and with no thoughts cluttering his head, Naruto could hear the Kyuubi's remarks as clear as day. At best they were usually rumblings of dark thoughts in the back of his mind since he had discovered its existence within him, but when Jiraiya made him meditate it was like he was forced to mentally interact with the being. What about the people that sealed you? I bet you felt that way about them too, and now look at you. Your big furry ass is stuck inside of me. If you're comparing yourself to any of those that overcame me, then all you're missing with that evaluation would be a large amount of divine intervention on your part, because that would be the only way you would last any longer than 5 seconds in a battle with any of them. You're nothing to me compared to them. All mouth and no strength or talent. Fuck you. A finger then started poking him in the head, bringing his attention back to his physical surroundings. You were way far gone there. You need to find a true balance when you meditate, or an enemy can take advantage of you while you clear your mind. Naruto nodded but also had a thought. When would I need to meditate in the middle of a fight? He shook that off though because it wasn't an important question at the moment. Maybe if I loosen his seal he can get better control over his Jinchuriki powers. Jiraiya thought before he saw Naruto punch the ground. What's the matter? If all I think about in a fight while using this stupid thing's chakra is trying to destroy whoever I'm fighting no matter what, then how does that make me any different from it when I'm using its chakra? Naruto said, speaking his thought angrily aloud, I just went right at her arrow sensei. I haven't fought like that since Desh. Since you fought Gaara. Jiraiya finished for Naruto, cutting him off from saying that he hadn't fought like that since he had first become a genin. You mostly fought feel like that as well. The only difference between those two fights and the one you had with Guren was that when you fought Gaara you were able to outmatch him in the end since he fought more berserk than you did. Against Fu you got your bell rang hard enough that you realized right from the start that you couldn't beat her in a head-to-head fight. Guren didn't flat out overpower him until the very end, as all she had done until that point was avoid him and use her crystals to divert his straightforward attacks. It hadn't been until he had gotten a hold of her and planned on slamming her straight through the concrete when she had pulled up enough power to injure him badly and leave. Fu had been beating the daylights out of him right when he started using his powers to try and match hers. That put it in his head that he had to use one of his tricks to get through that battle. When fighting Gaara, Shikamaru's input to fight smart kept Naruto from turning it into a battle of attrition that it had devolved into at that point when he and Gaara started bashing each other back and forth with their demonic influences. He knew how to fight, but was the Kyuubi's chakra that damaging to his own mental stability that he lost his own sense of base strategy? Jiraiya clasped his hands and then pulled them apart as a show. The problem is that you need to be able to filter out the Kyuubi's will when you use its chakra. If you can do that, then you can keep your sanity and own mental influence about you while fighting. When we begin your training for real, we'll have you get your meditation down, then we'll have you try it using the Kyuubi's chakra, and we'll add on more and more. Why can't we do it now? Have you actually paid attention to how much damage you do when you use the Kyuubi's chakra, or how much damage any Jinchuriki ki does in general when they fight? Jiraiya asked before using a past example. You and Fu tore up a good chunk of that forest part of the field during your exam battle, and you and Gaara went ahead and wrecked most of the rest of it. He gestured around to the tranquil location they were currently seated in. You're a good kid, but if you start pumping out more and more of the Kyuubi's chakra as your training progresses, you'll scare people. Eventually you'll start disrupting the overall environment itself. Upon hearing that, Naruto thought about it and started to laugh. His laughter lasted for over a minute until he realized that Jiraiya wasn't laughing himself and he stopped. Wait, you're serious? Remind me to go take you to see the Valley of the End. Naruto gulped just thinking about such a thing. An entire valley was created by this thing inside of him? Maybe it was best to practice working with a complete aura of destruction away from people he was probably going to have to look in the face the morning after he could possibly go on a rampage? Don't be so grim though, kid. Jiraiya said, grabbing Naruto's shoulder and shaking him good-naturedly. If you just think I'm going to leave you hanging for the next 5 months, you're out of your spiky little skull. I'll tell you what. Your birthday is coming up, right? 2 days. Naruto nodded with a suspicious look on his face. Yeah. October 10th. But how did you know when my birthday was anyway? I'm not just a ton of sex appeal and badass ninjutsu skill. Jiraiya pointed at himself in a showy manner. I am a master at gathering information. You're acting like it was hard to find out when your birthday is. But speaking of my unmatched prowess in the ninja arts, as a present for your birthday and for getting promoted during the exams, I'll teach you a strong ninjutsu, and I'll even give you a choice. One is an attack jutsu, one that would probably suit you pretty well, while the other is one of the most versatile techniques for a ninja to learn. An honor for any ninja. Well, Naruto felt he had enough attack ninjutsu for the moment, and he needed more versatile techniques since when Guren went on the attack he had absolutely no defensive answer for her. His desire for bouts of cool destruction had to be fought down for him to make his choice. I'll take the second one. A grin spread across Jiraiya's face as he bit his thumb and began making hand seals. I was hoping you would say that, kid. He said before slamming his palm on the ground. Kuchi Yasei no Jutsu, summoning jutsu. Naruto coughed and swung his arms around to get the smoke out of his face before coming face to face with a very large orange toad with blue markings on its body and a necklace with beads. He jumped back sharply and reached for his machete, flashing back to the last time he had to deal with Jiraiya's toads, until he saw a scroll wrapped up in the toad's tongue that Jiraiya took and unfurled to show a contract with 5 names signed on it. What's this about, Ero-sensei? Thanks, Gamma. Jiraiya said to the toad as he took the scroll from the large amphibian. This is what you need to sign to learn the technique that I said I'll teach you. Jiraiya pointed towards a pair of names on the contract, his own and that of Namikaze Minato. I signed it, and my student the Yondaime Hokage signed it. So how about it? It was for the best anyway. The other jutsu he was planning on teaching Naruto would go easier once he strengthened himself with the cliff climbing training. Getting slapped around by toads while training puts a sort of respect for them into you, at least as far as Naruto went, because his eyes shined over with the thought of being able to call that kind of a beatdown onto someone else for once. Able to see the eagerness in Naruto's eyes, Jiraiya gestured for Naruto to step towards the contract. Go ahead and sign your name on the contract in your blood and I'll teach you the hand seals for the jutsu. He then palmed his face when Naruto cut his entire palm with his machete to use it like a palette for his other hand's fingers to draw out the kanji for his name. You could have just bit your thumb and dabbed the rest of your fingers on that hand. Oh, never mind. Come on. Naruto said excitedly, ignoring the blood dripping off of the palm of one of his hands. It would heal up just fine in like a half an hour anyway. What are the hand seals, Ero-sensei? The seals are, Inu, Tori, Saru, and Hitsuji. Jiraiya said, watching Naruto go slowly through the seals. You've got to have some blood on your summoning hand before you make the seals, and after you make the seals you have to slam your blood-covered hand down on the ground. Naruto did just that, and with a huge grin on his face he slammed his hand down on the ground. Kuchi Yasei no Jutsu, Summoning Jutsu. A sealing array appeared on the ground where Naruto's hand was pressed, and a large amount of smoke appeared at the point of impact. The smoke started to clear out as Naruto looked around to see what cool combat-ready toad he had just brought from its home of, wherever they were from. He seriously needed to ask about that later. But when he didn't see anything his size, both he and Jiraiya looked down to see a tadpole flopping on the ground. Jiraiya said in a calm manner, belying the fact that he wanted to laugh as Naruto had a mortified look on his face. Yeah, we'll work on that. Gamma let out a few croaks to go along with the situation, and Naruto could swear that the toad was mocking him. The next day, Konoha Hospital. A nurse rushed into Sasuke's room and looked at him in astonishment. Uchiha-san, you're awake. That was surprising to say the least. Due to the amount of anguish he was in, Sasuke had been given a steady flow of painkillers and sedatives. Even if his long bout of pain and discomfort was over, he still should have been asleep until a doctor came in to force him to awaken. I'll be back in just a moment with the doctor. With that, the nurse scrambled out of the room to hurry and find his physician to report that he had somehow woken up well enough to sit up in his bed. Sasuke wasted no time in getting up as he swung his legs over the side of the bed facing the back wall of his room and flexed his hands out in a testing manner. Sasuke threw on a pair of gray sweatpants and a loose blue shirt as he looked around for his shoes, not turning to face the door when it opened back up and his doctor walked in. Uchiha-san, you should really still be in bed right now. He shouldn't even have been walking around with the sheer amount of sedatives that had been pumping through his body prior to his awakening. I'll have to ask you to lie back down until we can rightly release you. I'm fine. Sasuke said as he held his left hand on the side and back of his neck, rolling it out to work out whatever kinks he might have had. I'm feeling really good right now. I don't think I've ever felt this good in my entire life. He looked at his hands with his back still turned to the nurse and doctor and began laughing. Just what is this? That laughing didn't exactly sit easily with the doctor as he looked at the nurse, who nodded and stuck her head outside of the door. Orderly. In a matter of seconds, two men quickly made their way into the room, moving swiftly past the doctor and the nurse to try and restrain Sasuke. Their attempt to grab him only wound up with Sasuke substituting himself with the pole that had contained his IV with his fluids and sedatives. The confusion wrought by just how seamless the sudden action was quickly gave way to alarm once Sasuke knocked both men out with a kick that sent them through the glass observation window his room had come with. The nurse fearfully shrieked as Sasuke jumped out of the broken observation window like a blur and took off down the halls gleefully with this new power coursing through him. Damn it! The doctor muttered as he moved to assist the injured orderlies. Someone call Hokage-sama and tell him what has happened here. He kneeled down over one of the unconscious men and checked over his cuts from the glass and his probable concussion from the knockout, and tell him that the seal has manifested as well. Omake, training day 3. This is so stupid. A blindfolded Naruto grumbled out as he stumbled around an open field trying to feel his way around with his hands. This isn't what I said I needed help with, Kiba. Why am I here? An equally blindfolded Kiba let out a chuckle. Come on, Naruto. I tried to help you that one day, so in return I wanted you to train with my team for one day. It's not a big deal. It's normal. Akamaru popped out of Kiba's jacket with a blindfold on as well and let out a happy yapping back. Why are we all blindfolded though? This seems all kinds of dumb. A question with a quite obvious answer, Naruto-san. Even though he was blindfolded, Shino still had his sunglasses on over the cloth concealing his eyes. Team 8 is a team of tracking specialists. With my insects, Kiba, and Akamaru's powerful senses of smell, and Hinata's Byakugan, we don't need our eyes uncovered to be effective fighters. Naruto crossed his arms, and if one could actually see his eyes one would find them squinted and thought, I get why you two are blindfolded, because you can find things without seeing. But why did you blindfold Hinata? Doesn't she need her eyes to find stuff? That was basically the whole thing that made the Hyuga clan special. Hinata silently poked her fingers together bashfully as she was turned to face in Naruto's direction. Well, about that. You see, Naruto-kun. She started to say demurely until she saw Naruto turn towards her to face her, inability to see notwithstanding. Well. It was a good thing that Naruto couldn't see, because if he saw her red cheeks heating up she would have died from embarrassment. Taking mercy on the cute and bashful female teammate of the tracking specialist squad, Kiba let out a few chuckles and finished Hinata's thought for her. Hinata and her Byakugan can see through things, Naruto. That little blindfold isn't doing anything but making her use her Kekai Genkai to see. It's training her eyes to be better too. What the fuck am I supposed to do then, walk around with my hands out like a zombie? Naruto snapped irritably back in Kiba's direction. Damn, this is just payback because you didn't get to fight me during the exams, isn't it? Language, Naruto. The cool, collected, reprimanding, and very adult female voice of the teammate Sensei Kurenai got Naruto to freeze up the moment it entered his ears, and I was told you had your own way to locate the things that you can't see. You can use that to anticipate where the attacks in your opponents are coming from for this four-way spar. Honestly, she was kind of surprised that he had never tried this kind of training before. Oh. I guess that's right. Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head and laughing at himself sheepishly, I can. With that, he jumped into a ready taijutsu stance for his fighting style and patted his cheeks hard to wake himself up. Okay, let's do this. I'm ready to roll. Don't hold back on me, you guys, I can take it. Kiba chuckled as Akamaru jumped out of his coat onto the ground. You won't be saying that after you're face first on the ground eating dirt. If you're lucky, we won't all gang up on you at once just to take you out quick. It would be the wisest course of action. Shino said, holding his arms out to prepare to bring his Kikaichu insects into conflict, the reason being of course that Naruto-san is the rank Chunin amongst us all. That has to count for something. Ha, ha, ha. Naruto deadpanned irritably, knowing that they were picking with him. At least Hinata's nice enough not to pick on someone before the fight even begins. That's why I like her so much better than the rest of you. All Hinata was able to hear from Naruto's last comment was him saying, that's why I like her so much. Nothing more. This being simply because once her brain registered those words it shut off from overheating and rendered her unconscious. At that point, Naruto whipped his head around confusedly. Did we start? I heard something hit the ground pretty hard just now. He then released a pulse of his sonar jutsu and gasped, which one of you jerks knocked out Hinata before we even started? You don't treat a teammate like that. Kurenai, Shino, and Kiba all had the same thought run through their heads as they saw Naruto flagrantly ignore the fact that he had just used a jutsu that temporarily allowed him to see in favor of stumbling around blindly before he finally tripped over Hinata's down form. Idiot. Hey. Are we still fighting? Don't trip me while I'm trying to help her off of the battlefield. Show some common courtesy here. Omake, Training Day 4. Naruto stood in the field with Jiraiya pulling at his hair and stomping about angrily. Gah. A tadpole. I've done this 3 times already. Why do I keep getting tadpoles? What's the kid's problem with this thing? He should be able to summon pretty much anything. Jiraiya looked at the pathetic little tadpole flopping on the ground before it desummoned itself back from whence it came. Wait. I think I have an idea. Are you sure you are using enough dash? He was about to say chakra, but Naruto figured him to be prepared to say something else. Clones. That's a perfect idea, Ero-sensei. I'll get this jutsu down in a hurry after this. Naruto suddenly shouted, surprising Jiraiya and breaking his train of speech before he made his favorite and easiest to remember hand seal. This'll make the whole training thing go down way faster now. Tajuya Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone jutsu. The field was then filled with more than 100 Naruto clones. With a sharp look in their eyes, all of them rolled through 5 hand seals and slammed their hands onto the ground with a unanimous cry of the intended jutsu, Kuchi Yase no Jutsu, summoning jutsu. Meanwhile, Mount Mayuboku. Okami. Someone go get Fukazaku-sama and Shima-sama. All of the tadpoles just up and disappeared. What the hell is going on around here? That's it for part 17. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.